Tap that subscribe button and keep it locked here to Secrets to a Free Mind show with your host, Melanie Parker, powered by Quality Girl. In this episode, we'll hear from survivors and advocates on abuse but no excuse. Domestic violence survivors. Keep it locked. Welcome back. I'm Melanie Parker, founder of Quality Girl and your host of Secrets to a Free Mind show, where we help you free your mind, move forward in life. Shout out to Mike Horn at Mike Like Poetry on Twitter for co-designing the cover art and composing the beats. In addition to listening to this podcast, be sure to tap the thumbs up icon, subscribe button, and bell icon to love us, follow us, and receive clips via Twitter on episodes. Listen, folks, we're kicking off the celebration of Women History Month by talking with two women who are survivors and advocates for other women and men who have suffered from domestic violence. Get ready. Let's welcome Latosha Vines and Leesa Misra. Hi, ladies.
Hello.
So we want to get to know you. Let's start first with Latosha Vines. Who is Latosha Vines?
Latosha Vines is a native of Fountain, North Carolina. I am of African-American descent. Professional background is in medical and finance, and I hold 2 degrees, a Bachelor's of Science in Healthcare Management and Associate's degree in Business Administration. I am a Christian, and I attend World Overcomers Christian Church in Durham, North Carolina. I have 3 children, 2 girls and 1 son.
All right. Welcome, Latosha. Leesa, tell us about you.
So I am an Indian American professional woman. I was born in East India in a small state called Orissa. Moved to the U.S. when I was 6-year-old with my parents. And as a first-generation Indian American, I really tried my best to assimilate into American culture. Education and religion were really the focus growing up. So my undergraduate degrees in molecular cell bio. I've done graduate studies in project management and healthcare administration. Moved around quite a bit after grad school, living in DC, LA, Chicago, North Carolina. But I reside in Phoenix, Arizona now with my 2 boys, 11 and 7 years old. My professional work started in clinical patient care, working in medical clinics, and I also conducted clinical research. But now I've been in healthcare tech actually for over 15 years in the capacity of an analyst, project manager, director. And recently I started my own company, Elluminent, because I thought there were some gaps in products in the mental health care space and in healthcare in general with the emerging tech. So that's what I'm focusing on right now.
Oh, wonderful, ladies. Welcome. Leesa, tell us about your experience and how did you break the cycle?
My ex-husband and I met in DC through mutual friends, but it was really sort of a melting pot of young professionals, and not everyone knew each other that well. I knew him for about 6 months before we started dating, and I feel that the abuse didn't start right away, but pretty close to, gradually as we started our dating relationship and throughout our marriage, it just got progressively worse as far as physical and verbal abuse and even emotional abuse. It was traumatic for me. I had always been sheltered by my parents, I think, growing up. And I also did not have any experience as far as friends and family that I knew that had gone through abusive relationships. And so I felt that I was really caught up in this web of lies and intricacies that only domestic violence perpetrators can create for, their spouses. And it was very difficult for me to step out beyond the relationship that I was in and really look at things objectively. I mean, I was so emotionally attached, and there were a lot of moving parts throughout the 10-year marriage that I was in. And so it was really kind of until I stabilized, and like not moving around from state to state and, not being pregnant. Ultimately broke the cycle after my kids had been physically abused by my ex-husband. The very next morning, I decided to leave him and move in with my parents. And so, that was really the point of separation for us. And then we had litigation, and still going on litigation for 5 years. But at least, the benefit of my leaving and, litigating is that he is now forced to do counseling for domestic violence. We are all going to therapy, and that's been a great help to all of us as a family.
Very good, Leesa. Good to hear, and thank you for your transparency. Leesa, what are red flags you would like to share with men and women?
I think you really have to listen to your instincts. I think that there's such a social stigma attached to domestic violence and mental health.
Sure.
And not really understanding how it can take away a person's dignity and create this constant cycle, from generation to generation. For example, my ex-husband, I know that his father was very abusive to his mother because symptoms just exacerbate, if you don't get things taken care of, just like any other chronic illness that we acquire. Mental health, also the symptoms get worse and worse, and it just is something that needs to be addressed right away. And some of the red flags that I saw were, conversations where I felt like I was being gaslit and put down, which started way before the physical abuse. And, it was like verbally, he would call me names and then right away apologize. It was almost like this cat and mouse game where, I felt that he was trying to appease me in certain instances, but at the same time, he was abusing me in others. So it was very difficult to pinpoint initially. And, things that I overlooked, or I thought I was being too picky, or, I was trying to give him the benefit of the doubt for, I really wish that I had, talked to someone about it and really brought it out in the open to where, once the physical abuse started, it was already like I was mentally incapacitated, and I couldn't really even address the physical abuse because, we all know it's wrong, but you get caught up in this web and you just don't realize what's happening because of, how much you care about the person. But really that red flag is your natural instinct that you should always listen to when the first incident occurs, so it doesn't escalate. Because when he knew that I wasn't vocal about it, it's like things just got progressively worse throughout our 10-year marriage. And then it also, impacted our children because he also started becoming very abusive towards them.
True. Keep up appearances. But the hidden fight and the suffering of the soul causes you to break and not be able to move forward physically in what you need to do. Thanks for sharing that, Leesa. Latosha, tell us about your experience and how did you break the cycle?
My experience started with the phrase looking for love in all the wrong places. My relationship started very young. He was my middle school sweetheart. He was my first love. He was my first everything. So the experience for me was a lot different because we had actually grew up together After that process to get to the state of being in a domestic violence situation was, we had been married about 15 years at that time. He was currently serving in the U.S. military. He was a very intelligent, he was a very fun-loving, kind gentleman prior to him enlisting in the military. During the time, he got deployed over to Iraqi Freedom. Once he got deployed over to Iraqi Freedom, I still felt that we had the same kind of relationship. The relationship shifted when he returned. During that process and during the process of being a military family, they always give you some form of therapy, some form of counseling, some form of help for you to be able to cope with your soldier being gone and with coping with your soldier returning. Prior to the soldier returning was a seminar that I attended with Bishop T.D. Jakes. And he came to inform us that our soldiers was not going to return the way that they left. I really didn't grasp that until I was about 4 months pregnant with my son when the domestic disputes and altercations and stuff started to happen. I didn't understand that. I was in my 20s. I felt like, life was going good. Nothing was gonna stop at that time. But Bishop Jakes was so true. Life became different in an instant. When he returned, he started using drugs more. He started using alcohol more. He started having altercations, and that was something that we didn't have prior to him being in the military at all. So life changed instantly. I had no outlets. I was a very private, young lady at that time, and I had 2 other children. I was 26 hours away from home. I did not have anyone that I could call. I didn't have anyone that I could lean on, or none of that at that time. So it was a very difficult time for me dealing with the experiences and the things that I was going through. How did I break the cycle? I broke the cycle by telling someone. I called my parents. I let my parents know that the situation that was at hand, he had got upset about finances. At that time, when you are deployed, you make a lot more money than you normally make during your regular pay periods of whatever. He thought that I was misusing funds because I was giving offerings to my local church, and he decided to hold me at gunpoint. Now I was in one room, and my children was on the outside of the door yelling and screaming and trying to figure out what was going on. At that time, I called my parents. They came to Texas to see after me. Once they got there, they didn't see nothing abnormal. So my father was like, in other words, I wasn't telling the truth about the situation. So they were there for a couple of days, and then they packed up and they left. It was hard for me to also break the cycle because I grew up in an abusive family. My dad was abusive to my mom. I had seen my sisters being abused in their marriages. I had seen my grandmother being abused in her marriages. So it was very hard for me to break that cycle because it was a learned behavior for me. The only way that I was able to break the cycle was allowing someone in my local church in on some things that was going on in my marriage, and they was able to assist me with getting help.
Okay. Very good. Very good. Thanks for sharing, Latosha. Now, Latosha, how did your faith help you?
My faith was the center of my being at that time. I grew up in a very religious background. My father was a pastor of a Baptist church back home. My grandfather was a pastor. My mom was an evangelist. I have several siblings that's in the ministry. So to me and my culture as being African American, God is what would be like put up on a pedestal. And I'm not saying that in like a derogatory way or something, but it was just all about God, all about God, all about God. I grew up in church 7 days a week. So my faith was very important. During that time, I was young and I was away from my family. So I had to totally lean and depend on my faith because I didn't have my mom that was around the corner or my sister that was around the corner. I had actually one person to rely on. So during that process, going to church and learning more about God and creating that relationship with God on my own, I decided to pray and read the Bible. And during that process of reading the Bible, the scriptures that was given to me during that time was Psalms 91 and Jeremiah 29 and 11. And they was something that I did every day, meditation. I made my daughters, and they was young. I think the ages of them at that time, I think one was in first grade, so she had to be around 6, and the other one was probably about 8 in like the 3rd grade. I had them to remember the scriptures during the times that their father was nowhere around, to be able to keep us connected, keep us molded, and keep us with a firm foundation with God.
And Tasha, I love the way you said you developed a personal relationship with God. And I know that we all can speak that we've had families who have a faith-filled backgrounds. However, the operative word here is we accepted a personal relationship with God in order to understand who He is in us and who we are in Him. So thank you for sharing that. Latosha, how can men and women process the problem and devise a resolution?
Processing the problem is accepting what is actually going on. A lot of people, it's hard for them to accept it because they do not want to think that that person that is the abuser would do them harm. Doing that process for me, I know that it was very hard for me because I was a very private person. I didn't want people to know. But on the other hand, I did have resources that I could use that was in arm's length, but I had fear. I was afraid to allow someone to know that that picture, that perfect picture, was shattered. It wasn't there. It was null and void. Coming from a family that had abuse. And then the other thing, to see my parents at a young age separate. For me to come from that environment, I did not want to give my kids the same thing. I wanted them to have more than I felt that I had during that process. But the one thing that helped me the most was my best friend. She was a therapist. and I was letting her in on some of the things that was going on in my life between me and my ex. And she was like, you need to talk to someone. And I'm like, no, I can't talk to anybody. And because the situation was happening to me and my child, she was like, well, you know, since you're not going to take authority over yourself, I can get someone in the situation to take authority for your daughter. So it ended up being that some other measures was taken. My daughter ended up going to therapy, and just the conversation on the first initial intake of my daughter talking, the therapist brought me back in the room and she asked me one question. And she said, do you love yourself? And I was like, oh yes, I love myself. There's nothing wrong. Like, I'm going to get through it. You know, things are going to get better and all of that. But all of that was denial. All of that was another thing, another learned behavior that I've seen my mom go through for years. And I felt that it was right. But as an adult, I learned that everything that your mom and your dad have taught you, it might have been right during that season, but it might not be right for your season and your situation. So during that time, I started going to therapy. And that's what I would tell other people. Seek out therapy if it has to be a counselor, if it has to be a psychologist, if you have to have a psychiatrist, if you go through spiritual counseling, as long as you're able to talk to someone, to release that pressure, to release that pain, to allow someone else to help you to be able to pick up the broken pieces. During that process, it was very difficult for me because I was private, and I was like, so it was so much fear there because I was like, oh, somebody is going to find out that I don't have that picture perfect family or picture perfect marriage. So now, about 4 years ago, I established a women's organization called Pink and Pearls, for me to be able to assist those women with the situations that I had to go through.
Very good.
And during that process, I always see like myself in that mirror, them looking at me, but me looking at them and saying, wow, it was hard to be able to overcome that situation. It was hard for me to be transparent. It was hard for me to even figure out how I was going to get a resolution. But I was able to go to therapy, connect with religious people in my congregation, connect with people that was working with me on my job, start volunteering, start going to different seminars and stuff to help build that person that was laying dormant on the inside for all those years. During that process, now it's easy for me to assist someone else.
Yes.
It's easy for me to be able to tell another woman that you can make it, that I'm here for you. So it's a lot of different ways. And those was just a couple of ways that I used to resolve my issue.
Yes, and I love that because when we're able to relate to others based on similar experiences, we're not being judgmental. We're able to say, oh, yeah, look, listen, girlfriend, I've been there. We can easily find ourselves in situations. Again, so praying each other through, being able to have that pillow for each other, as it were, and share. Simply share and listen. And I think that's definitely is key, and be able to see people through, because we all on a journey. We are all on a journey. And that's the beautiful thing of it. Leesa, which self-love tactics did you practice?
It was just such a stressful situation. After I left him with my children, I immediately went into therapy. I put my kids in therapy at a local domestic violence shelter. which was really important because I felt they understood the nuances of what we were going through. I met an amazing woman at the shelter who was really very helpful in assisting me in terms of processing everything that was going on, because I was also a very private person, had not told anyone other than my parents at that time what was going on. And I didn't really want others to know what was happening with me because, like Latosha, we had this image, my ex-husband was a physician and I was a professional and we had these two beautiful kids and, what could be wrong with that picture? And so my biggest question, I think, after I left was why? Why did he do this to me? And, I was very lost and confused. Like during that, 12, 15 years where I knew him and was married to him, I just felt like I needed to find myself again and find out, why did I go through this? And she, this individual at the shelter, the therapist, recommended several books. She talked to me so much and in such a helpful way. One of the books that I really, really liked and would recommend is Why Does He Do That by Lundy Bancroft. It really helped me understand his personality as an abuser and, even myself better. I also attended a lot of group therapy sessions with other women who had gone through domestic violence. And, some who were in an even worse situation than I was. And, it taught me really that gratitude, because when I saw my story reflected in other women, some women had it worse and some women had it better, but I was just able to take something out of that session and know that I was so grateful for whatever I had gone through in terms of learning about how supported I was, and how some women didn't have what I had. And that really helped me also overcome some of the difficulties at that time. Other ways I practiced self-love I'd always been very spiritual and religious. That sustained me. I had grown up in a strictly religious Hindu family. Actually, my father prayed every day, and in fact, both my parents have built a Hindu temple in Phoenix. It was the first Hindu temple in the city. That practice, I was able to, help myself and help my children. I also, did a lot of meditation. I think exercising, such as doing yoga and a lot of cardio, eating really healthy, all of those aspects of, trying to build that into your lifestyle, though at the time was really, really important and critical to my recovery. And I spent a lot of time with my family and friends, talking with them. And luckily my parents live nearby. I have a lot of really good friends from high school and college that are in the same city. So I reconnected with them because I had not spoken with them in a long time, since a part of the abuser's tactic is to create isolation. And, most of all, I feel like I went through kind of a metamorphosis, like almost a rebirth, because I think, I had always been, career-oriented, education-oriented, and I sort of lost that aspect of myself. And I started going back to school and looking at, what really interested me in terms of my career. And so slowly I, overcame, just that 10 years of condensation and physical abuse. And I realized that, as an individual, I'm a powerful person and I have a lot to contribute to society. And so that's one of the reasons that I started my company, is because I really wanted to do work that was helpful for our community. And I also started out talking to different women in the local domestic violence shelters. I went back to work as a resource strategist, kind of like a recruiter slash consultant. And so I realized that a lot of the barriers to, women who want to leave a domestic abusive partner is because they're not financially sound, and they may have given up their careers because of their partner's wishes or whatever it is. And so I thought that if I could help some of these women in terms of an advocate for them when they're looking for jobs, even though they may have had gaps, I, was really interested in building and defining them as individuals who could also contribute in some way. And so I did that for some time. And again, being able to connect with them and understanding what they had gone through was also really helpful for me to, through my recovery process. And I also, like I said earlier, I'm creating some healthcare tech products related to mental health because I think that, again, there's such a social stigma applied to mental health. And I feel that in order to break the cycle, it's really important to not just diagnose mental health earlier on their kids. I mean, I in my research, I learned that anxiety and depression can be a part of children as young as 3 years old. So, it's just unbelievable how things can just get worse and worse, and no one really, focuses on mental health until now. I think the mental health landscape has changed quite a bit in our healthcare industry over the last couple of years. But, the most important thing, I think, as far as self-love is to give ourselves dignity and to create that self-respect so you have an inclination to believe in yourself and follow your instincts, be independent, and, also teach our children the same thing and show them that really any form of violence is wrong.
That's right. That's right, Leesa. Any resources you'd like to share with us?
I think there's a lot of national resources. There's a Family Violence Prevention and Service Program. There's the National Domestic Violence Hotline. And you can call, and they're also able to provide a lot of local resources. There's also specific toll-free numbers for national teen dating abuse.
Very good.
And then in Arizona, where I reside, there's the Arizona Coalition to End Sexual and Domestic Violence.
Latosha, any resources you'd like to share with us?
Yes, my own organization. And that organization is called Pink and Pearls Empowering Women, LLC. You can find it on Facebook. Message me at Pink and Pearl Empowering Women at gmail.com. In North Carolina, in the city that I reside in Wake County, it's a couple of organizations that specifically help both sexes, male and female, and one of those organizations is called Step Up Ministry. The other one is called Dress for Success. And another one is called Interact.
Ladies, I tell you, I'm so thankful to you for speaking with us tonight, sharing your intimate stories. And Leesa, you said an operative word, overcoming. And that's what I want us to leave with our audience tonight, being overcomers. Do not feel less than or like losers for what we've experienced. We all experience, we have pain. It becomes our passion and our platform. And we're able to impart, to share with others, to say, look, I know where you've been, and let's lift each other up. There may be a time we may see it again because, of course, we're dealing with the soul where we're hearing things through the internet, TV, through conversation. all the time, and we steady have to cleanse our souls. So even if we experience it again and have to remember through our spirit, we can still share, listen, and pick each other up. Thank you, Latosha and Leesa, for hanging out with us tonight.
Thank you so much, Melanie. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Join us next week for the episode Win Back Your Power from Gaslighters, Manipulative, Unhealthy, Competitive People. Remember, as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, if you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, you have to keep moving forward. Peace.